Hey everyone, and welcome to This is Meetup. My name is Sonu Kapoor, and I'm here with Ahmed. We have a very exciting guest today with us today, Mateusz from Angular.love. Hey Mateusz, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine, thanks. How are you guys?
We're good, we're good.
Good, good.
So me and Ahmed, we are the hosts of this episode, and we're going to talk with Matthew on enhancing Angular applications. We got some fantastic events lined up for the coming months, complete with exciting giveaways and raffles featuring ebooks and software licenses. Be sure to check out for our details and follow us on X for the latest updates. All right, before we get started, why don't we go through some introductions? I'll start first. So I'm a senior developer with over 2 decades of experience in software development. Obviously, I love Angular. I'm doing front end right now. I'm currently located in Canada, and I'm super excited about this meetup. Ahmed, you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Sunu. So, hi everybody. I'm Ahmad Mustafa. I'm a senior full stack engineer working mostly with ASP.NET and Angular. I've been around since some time, so from Angular JS days until yes, in 2009 until now, mostly working in Angular and ASP.NET. I organize Franken JS in Nuremberg, and also try to help here Sunu also with organizing here. This is Meetup. And I'm very excited today to be organizing this together. So feel free to drop us any questions in the chat anytime. We will answer these during the Q&A sessions. And let's make this great event together. You can also catch up with the organizers on X. Just follow the handles on top of our backgrounds. You can see it there. So now back to you, Sono.
Thank you, Ahmed. Matthew,
Mm,
so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Mateusz, and on daily basis I work in the House of Angular as an Angular team leader, and also I'm working with Angular from very beginning. So whenever the framework was released and it was in the beta, I was already working with that one. Previously has been working with Angular JS and ASP.NET, but right now I am fully with NF frontend and with Angular, and I love it. And I'm extremely excited to be there with you guys and have a chance to talk on your meetup.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. I feel like we all three have a very similar background, right? We're all .NET and then moved to Angular,
Yeah.
or some are still doing .NET. Yeah,
Yeah, because it was easier to move, easy to move from .NET to TypeScript and finally to Angular for me, yeah. And also, it's often said that it's easy for backend developers with experience in Spring to learn Angular because there are also decorators and so on. So
Yeah.
that's why.
yeah, there's definitely a lot of similarities, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, awesome. So tell us about your presentation. What are we gonna hear about today?
Yeah, so today we'll talk about the SSR in the Angular and the data hydration, the new features related to the hydration, but also I will start slightly with the history of SSR in Angular, how it's everything started and how it's going right now. So starting from the history through understanding what the SSR is in compared to client-side rendering, and finally leading to data hydration and benefits of applying the SSR to your applications based on the one case study from some big company. So
Hmm,
that's what we will discuss today.
awesome. Yeah, yeah, I'm totally looking forward for that. So why don't we just go ahead and start with the presentation then?
Mhm. Okay, sure.
So, Matthew, you can share your screen shared. So I will add it now to stage.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay,
and
so let me
so
open it, the
have fun.
presentation, and let me know whether you can see it. Yeah, I see you can see it already. So I will start with my presentation. Okay, so as I said, I am Mateusz Stefańczyk, and on daily basis I serve as Angular team leader in House of Angular. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. In House of Angular, we offer a bunch of the services. We offer the audits, code audits and consulting. So whenever you struggle with your existing solution or would like to try or start the new solution the right way, don't hesitate to contact with us. Despite of being software development company, we also support the community, Angular community, and a lot of open source projects. We are supporting the NGRX, NGNet, NX, but also recently we had the pleasure to be partner for Angular London community, for example. We are also running our own community, which is called Angular.love, and Angular.love is a place for all Angular lovers. It's initially was the blog, but right now we also strongly doing some kind of the meetups and other activities like interviews with people who are just attending our meetup speakers. So I strongly encourage you to follow us on our social media and to take a look at our blog, because recently we have rewritten it to be fully based on the Angular 18. Here we utilize all recent features like SSR with the hydration, new way of hydrating the app, Angular signals. So all kinds of these features are already battle tested in our blog. And this blog is open source, so you can take a look at the repository, see how we can have organized this architecture of this application, how we utilize previously mentioned feature. So it might be also a very good source of the knowledge for the people who are struggling how to structure my application, how to use NX, how I can play with NX libraries, and so on. Here, I also want to extend my heartfelt thanks for Dominic Donner, who was one of the leading developer of this project, and thanks to him. It was created and it's right now being deployed and accessible for all kind of the Angular.love community members. Recently, also, I have shared there my blog posts where I describe the LED variable, which was released in Angular 18.1. So I strongly encourage you to take a look. Okay, so as I already mentioned, today we'll talk how we can enhance our Angular applications with an SSR and data hydration. And we'll start with the history of SSR in the Angular. So initially, when Angular framework was created, there was no intention to support server-side rendering, and there was no capabilities of server-side rendering your application within an Angular. Next to the Angular framework, there was community project called Angular Universal, which has been supporting the SSR. Then when times goes on, Angular core team moved 2 core members to this open source project. They start supporting and working together with community on the Angular SSR and support for SSR in Angular. But even though this project was somehow abandoned, we can say, it was capable to do some server-side rendering, but it was far behind the other frameworks like Next.js, who is based on the React and is known from very good server-side rendering. But at some point, Angular core team realized that they also need to support SSR and need to do better in terms of the SSR. And they decided that they will merge these 2 projects and there will not be separation between Angular and some Angular library which is supporting the SSR. But right now, Angular itself is supporting the SSR, and it's like internal part of the framework to have the capability of enabling or disabling SSR and adding SSR to your app. Right now, even if you render the application, the CLI asks you whether you want to add the SSR by default to your application. So they strongly bet on the SSR right now and just are trying to follow the community, follow community needs, but also follow the other frameworks, what they providing for the users and developers. Why the SSR is so important? It's mostly due to the fact how fast app became visible for the user, what I will show you soon, and why it's important to pretty fast show something to user, just show him that our app being loaded. There is like a lot of data showing that if the app is loading longer than a few seconds, just 2-3 seconds, user will abandon your site. So it's especially crucial for all kind of the e-commerce services to load something for the user as soon as possible. Otherwise, he will probably abandon the site and he will not finish buying on your site, for example. So right now, let's move to comparing the client-side rendering with the server-side rendering and understand the differences between those two. So the client-side rendering is the way of rendering the app we by default have in the Angular, and by default, most of us probably has been working on. I divided this process into 4 steps, which is loading JS, fetching data, rendering components, and finally the step within which we can see something and app being interactive. If we go through these steps, we can see that first we are fetching the entire JS needed for our application to be rendered. Then by applying this JS, we start executing it. So we probably start fetching some kind of the data needed for our app. By having the data, we render the components, and in the last step, our app became visible and interactive. So throughout the 3 steps, for user, our app is completely blank page and he don't see anything, but at the last step, it's visible and it's being interactive. So whenever he starts clicking the buttons, typing within an input, it will be responsible. So he click the button, something will happen, pop-up will open, he will be moved to another page, product will be added to the cart, and so on, because there is entire page set up and ready to be used in the browser. When we compare it to the server-side rendering, which process I also divided into 4 steps, which first is the fetch data, then is render as HTML, load JS, and finally hydrate. What we can notice that in server-side rendering, already in the 2nd step, the app became visible for the user. So coming back what I said at the very beginning, that we should try to display for the user as fast as we can some content that it's being loaded, became visible, that something is happened. In the SSR, we have it much faster than we had it in the client-side rendering. If I go back, you can see here only at the 4th step, something was visible and was already interactive. In the server-side rendering, the app being visible at the step 2. But it's being interactive at the step 4. So as it was in case of the client-side rendering, that's what we call hydration in terms of the SSR, and I will explain this process better later. But HTML being visible slightly faster. And if we'll dive deeper into the process of server-side rendering and how it looks under the hood, we can divide it into this representation where we have the client and the server. Our client make requests for the server, and what's happened under the server? We start fetching the data from our data source, data being returned, and we binding this data to our components. When data being bind, our components being rendered at the server, and they are changed to pure HTML without any JavaScript, and this HTML being sent to our browser while we display it. And again, here we are in the case where our app is already visible, but it's not interactive yet. So we are in the scenario where entire HTML being populated, it's being visible, but it's not being interactive. And we start the process of hydration. And hydration is the process of fetching JavaScript and attaching all event listeners from DOM to this fetch JS. So we are just hydrating our DOM with JavaScript. And since this hydration process is done, our app became interactive. So what we are doing when this HTML being in the browser, we start fetching JavaScript and our app became interactive due to hydration process. And previously, this hydration was supported by the Angular, but had some kind of the issue or disadvantage when we compare it to the other frameworks, and it was called UI flickering, and it was looking exactly like that. So whenever app being rendered, it's disappear and being recreated from scratch. So we had this pure HTML, and when we have been performing the hydration process, it disappear and appear again. In other frameworks, it was smooth. Nothing was destroyed. Your components hasn't been destroyed, but your JavaScript was populated to these components. In Angular, in the past, it was like he had to destroy entire DOM and recreate it from scratch to fulfill it with JavaScript. But it's the past. Right now, we have the client hydration, and simply by saying provide client hydration, we get rid of this issue and getting the new way, smooth way of hydrating our applications. But there might be a case where you would like to skip this hydration because, for example, whenever you use some kind of the third-party library, which is based on the window. As we know, window is not available for us on the server. Window is only available on the client side. We can say that you please skip hydration for this particular component and destroy and recreate it from scratch whenever it's landed on the browser. We have directive to that, and it might be usable in various cases. Okay, there is also something called partial hydration, and that's the feature that Angular core team is strongly working right now. And imagine a situation when our app is already rendered, it's visible for the user, but only some parts of that being interactive. So as we see based on our presentation, the blue part is interactive and the dark part are not interactive. And what we would be able to do, what we can imagine as a partial hydration, is hydrating our pieces of our application on demand when it's actually needed. So I give it your example that, for example, JS is needed for us whenever user click button to add product to the cart, we need to execute some logic, but till the point he's clicking this button, we don't need JavaScript, which is handling it. And if we don't need this JavaScript, we don't fetch this JavaScript, it means that our app will be faster, it will be lighter for the user because he don't have to fetch unnecessary JavaScript ahead of time. And whenever, for example, he decides to click button in this particular section, we'll perform the hydration process and make it interactive. And that is the process we are looking for. And that's what I know from the recent presentations of Minko, who is also within the core team of Angular. They are pretty close to make this feature available for us. So we should soon see some kind of the RFC, how this feature might works like. Recently, also, we get extended debugging experience of hydration. So right now in Angular DevTools, we can see which component has been hydrated. And this hydration is signalized by this small icon. And based on that, we can see that our components have been hydrated. Whenever it will be gray and empty, it will mean that those components haven't been properly hydrated or haven't been hydrated yet, or we don't want it to have them somehow hydrated. But it's a pretty good way to illustrate and visualize how the process of hydration and what is the status of hydration within your application. And it will be also great, especially in terms of the partial hydration, when we maybe would like to make something hydrated on demand, and we can check there whether the, for example, expected parts are not hydrated and expected parts are hydrated. So that's what we would utilize to see what's going on in terms of the hydration process within our app. If we enable this checkbox, it can also show us as some kind of the overlay above our app, where we can see each component and status of its hydration process. So in this case, again, everything is properly hydrated, but when we'll have this partial hydration, it will be great to see what's not being hydrated and whether it's became whenever we do some interactivity with unhydrated parts. So this feature I expect to definitely improve the developer experience of some more advanced scenarios of server-side rendering. Going ahead, we can utilize latest defer loading with SSR. So for now, whenever we utilize the defer, and we can utilize it with on viewport, for example, where we say that this particular component should be lazy loaded only whenever it's became visible in the viewport. Otherwise, displays some specific skeleton loader. And thanks for this kind of separation, what should be visible on the viewport and what we should render whenever it's not on the viewport, we can limit the amount of JavaScript we are fetching in scope of our app. Because if this component is heavy and it's don't need to be visible initially, don't need to be rendered on the server, we can like replace it with some kind of the skeleton. We can separate it in scope of the defer, divide it into separate chunk, which will be fetched on demand, and on the server render only the skeleton, which is mostly lighter and will speed up the way our app being rendered. So why we also may need SSR? The first one is performance. So as I said, when we utilize all kind of the feature, divide our app properly, we don't fetch what we don't need, and so on, app will be faster, we will fetch less JavaScript, and it will much more faster become visible. Our app will be much faster visible for the user. It's also definitely improved SEO, which is extremely important for any publicly available apps, and especially for some kind of the e-commerce to score properly on any kind of the index, especially Google index. And one of the factors Google take into account whenever they are indexing the app is how performant is this app. And how they measure it, they have dedicated web core vitals. And based on the web core vitals, they are also checking how your app is scoring and how it should be indexed. SSR is known from definitely improving the core web vitals in compared to the client-side rendering. And what Angular core team says that in lab tests, they observed 35% better LCP of a real-world app whenever they introduce latest SSR feature and especially client hydration to this particular app. And the 35% largest contentful paint improvement is pretty huge. And definitely it can make a difference in terms how our app is scoring and how our app being indexed. Also, we will take a look how LCP improvement affect the Vodafone and the way the Vodafone is scoring and how it's improved and change the user experience and sales. So based on the Vodafone case study, by 31% improvement in LCP, they increase in total sales by 8%, uplift in the lead to visit rate by 15%, and uplift in the cart to visit rate by 11%. So we can see based on the study from pretty huge company, mostly known from everyone, that the improving by 31% lead them to some great improvements in total sales, like 8% in the scale of this kind of the company. It's probably pretty huge, and it's without introducing some new services or anything, but simply by improving the existing products and the way the existing products being rendered, how fast it's being rendered, how well it's scored in some kind of the core tricks, all kind of the apps undergo, they lead to get this kind of the improvements. So let's see what is the potential future of Angular SSR and what the Angular team is working currently on. So as I said, they are right now working on the partial hydration, and that's the main focus in terms of the SSR, but also they are tightly working with a Wiz team, and Wiz team has pretty good knowledge in terms of the rendering the app in the efficient way, and especially there is a term called resumability, which was an idea shared by the Quick, but from that, what I know, it was initially created in Google exactly with a Wiz team. So Angular right now is cooperating with a Wiz team, how these two teams can exchange the knowledge internally within Google to improve in terms of the SSR, but in general, the client-side experience of rendering the app and interacting with the app. What Wiz team has taken from the Angular are Angular signals, which they introduce within the YouTube. And from that, what we know from Google team, these signals are work perfectly fine on YouTube and with the Wiz framework. So hopefully Angular team will be able to take something from the Wiz team and just put it in the Angular, and we'll get also great experience and benefits of partial hydration or resumability at some point. And that was all from my side. So thank you very much for listening.
Yeah. Hi. Give me a second. I think Suna
Yeah.
also would like to join. Yeah, but thank you very much, Matthew. So
Thank you.
I think we have two questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first question was from Jerry. So he's a React.js developer, and he was asking, so is Google still own or support Angular?
Yeah, it's still going, it's still supporting, and if you are using the Google products, a lot of internal Google products are done on the Angular, so I will not expect the framework to be abandoned soon.
And then the second question from Jay is hydration similar to the mechanism in other frameworks like React or Vue?
Yeah, like hydration is not anything specific to the framework you are using. It's like an overall idea existing within a web development, and it's a process of fulfilling, like attaching the DOM listeners to the JavaScript on demand. Yeah, so first you render your app, you have the static HTML, which is not interactive, and then you're attaching all kinds of the events in scope of this HTML to the JavaScript, which you fetch. So usually these two things are connected, but in this there is a separation between static HTML and JavaScript, and then they are connected, and we call it hydrating or hydration.
Great, thank you very much, Matthew. So, you have now. So, yeah, I can. So, for wrapping up today's event, we want to extend a huge thank you to everybody who joined us for the participation, also for the questions and answers. And yeah, just remember we got some exciting events coming up in the next month. Month is so not only one, so we have a lot, and so fantastic giveaways and raffles. So don't miss it out, and always so try to check our website for details and our X for the latest updates. And Suno.
Yeah, thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Matthew. Yeah, like previously said, feel free to connect with the organizers on X. We would obviously love to keep this interesting conversation going and hear your feedback. And as always, if you miss anything or want to revisit today's discussion, this meetup will be uploaded on YouTube. So keep an eye on out for the link on the website and social channels. And also, don't forget to send us your questions at any time. We'll try to answer them even after the meetup. So thanks again. We look forward to seeing you in future events.
Yeah,
thank you very much. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.